Hey there, I'm Kevin O'Connor, a staff solutions engineer here at HashiCorp, and today I'm going to be taking you through a brief overview and demo on the ServiceNow integration with HCP Terraform. Okay, so let's get into it. For some background and starters, let's first think about why we might want to leverage ServiceNow for Terraform deploys. Well, if you're a community edition user today, I want you to imagine being able to provision infrastructure with the same speed and consistency you get from Terraform, but without the need for dedicated scripts or extensive coding, or really requiring your users to be experts in Terraform config at all. And now envision that you're able to deliver all of this directly from a user-friendly catalog in ServiceNow that's tied to Terraform modules hosted in the HCP private registry. In this example, we're going to be using what we call NoCode modules, which abstract all of the Terraform config, the HCL, away from users and allow for deployments more or less through the click of a button. And then since you're leveraging HCP, you're also going to get all the benefits that that platform provides. Inline policy as code, drift detection, ephemeral workspaces that auto-destroy to clean up unused resources, secure state, sensitive variable management, right? You name it, all the stuff that's in the platform is still in play. For this, though, all those features are going to be out of scope for the demo. But if you're interested in any of them, please feel free to reach out to me or your account team, or just reach out to us through our website, and we'd be glad to talk you through them. But back to the demo at hand here, what we're really after is enabling you to offer a streamlined self-service model for your internal teams with all of those built-in governance and approvals workflows. And like I think you'll see in a few minutes, we're going to cut down on a lot of the complexity and overhead that's associated with Terraform Community Edition setups, or even HCP setups that are vying for more of that self-service feel. You're going to avoid a lot of the manual burden of requiring teams to be experts in infrastructure code while still getting the reliability and orchestration benefits of the HashiCorp Cloud Platform. At the end of the day, we're really just looking to empower more users to provision infrastructure securely and consistently, all within a single enterprise-ready platform. So, having said that, let's get into it. And there's some things on the back end that I'll cover before executing our deployment, show you how this is all set up. So for starters, of course, you're going to need an instance of ServiceNow running. That's what I have set up over here, right? As you can see, I've got a nice dev instance of ServiceNow that the ServiceNow team was kind enough to provide. I think you can get one yourself as well, too, if you go and sign up so that you can play around. And they have some nice tutorials as well to get you familiar with the system. But once we have that, you're going to need to go ahead and head over to the ServiceNow store and download the Terraform ServiceNow integration. Right, you can download it here. It's fairly straightforward. You can click that get button, download it, and install the Terraform app onto your ServiceNow instance. They have directions. I think it's fairly intuitive, right? And then, as you can imagine, right, we're really going to be interacting with two different platforms. We have ServiceNow, and then we have HCP Terraform, and we're going to need to set up authentication between them so that they can securely communicate. Ultimately, we're looking to kick off a Terraform deployment from ServiceNow. So the question really is, how are they going to be able to securely communicate? If you've ever done anything like this before, you're probably thinking it has something to do with API tokens. And if that's what you're thinking, you'd be correct, right? So as you can imagine, we created an API token in HCP, and then we have to input that on the ServiceNow side of things. It's like a password that ServiceNow is going to use to log in to HCP when it's kicking off the deployment. So if I search within the bar here for Terraform, get us some inputs on our Terraform app, and we go down underneath Terraform, Terraform variables, and configs, and I bring this up. You can see that we have an API team token this is what I created on the Terraform side of things. It's obviously kind of masked from us so that other users within my org wouldn't be able to see this, but that's the token value that I input there. We have our host name as well too, which if you're using HCP Terraform is always going to be app.terraform.io. This would be different if you're using our self-managed version of Terraform, Terraform Enterprise, for like an on-prem self-hosted option, where maybe your host name has maybe your company name in it, some other naming convention that you've decided for your host name of Terraform. And then we're going to have our org name, and this is our HCP Terraform org name, right? So if you're familiar with Terraform Enterprise, HCP Terraform, the hierarchy of things is typically organization, projects, workspaces. So where org is that top level within the hierarchy. My org name is just called K O'Connor, so that's what I'm putting in there. That's essentially it, right? ServiceNow has that token or password that it needs to communicate with HCP. The next thing that comes to mind is really, how is ServiceNow going to know what it needs to do in Terraform, right? What is it going to be asking of Terraform? Because Terraform can do a bunch of things. It can create workspaces and deploy infrastructure. It can update those things. It can then delete those resources. But the cool thing with the ServiceNow Terraform app is that you don't have to worry about programming all those API calls to do those things. Typically, if we had some sort of a pipeline that triggered a deployment, you'd be specifying the exact Terraform API calls that you would need to make. The Terraform app already has those things kind of pre-built in, right? So taking a look at our resource catalog, I'll open this up here. We search for catalogs, service catalog, and catalogs. We can see we have the Terraform catalog, and this is what's going to be given to us out of the box when we install the Terraform app within ServiceNow. Right? And if I'm going to click this open and go and hit view all items, we can see we have a number of catalog items that are within here. Apply a run, create a workspace with variables, delete a workspace, whatever it may be, right? And these are all kind of pre-built templates that the Terraform app has for us that we're able to take advantage of. If we scroll down a little bit more, we can see we have one that's called Provision NoCode Workspace and Deploy Resources. And this is what we're going to be looking at today. So I'll go ahead and click into there. We can see we have a little description of what it is that we're going to do, right? This catalog item creates a workspace based on a NoCode module published in your HCP Terraform registry beforehand, starts a run, and automatically applies your infrastructure. Well, great. That's exactly what we want. And as we can see down here, we have some input variables that we're going to be able to configure, which can be kind of set by our ServiceNow admins based on what it is that the catalog item will be deploying. In this case, it's a database. It's actually an AWS RDS instance. So maybe we just want to ensure that obviously we're giving it a name, and then we have a, maybe we're setting up a database profile on the instance as well too. That's going to require a username and password. So once the person's on the DB, they can then log in under that profile. Back up top here, we have some specifics to Terraform. What is the workspace name that this resource will be deployed into? And the great thing with Terraform as well, or this with ServiceNow and the integration as well, is that the workspace name, if we were to just call this App A, the workspace that's actually deployed will be appended with a request number from ServiceNow. So it'll say App A and then RITM like 001, right? And that corresponds to the request number from ServiceNow, essentially like the order number. So you have a nice sort of chain of custody from the actual ordering of the resource through to the delivery, where you're able to kind of link those two things, the request and then the actual deployment of that request. We have the NoCode module name as well too, and this is going to be the actual module name that we will be deploying, right? So we're going to have some pre-configured modules that are ready to be deployed, and that's initiated from the ServiceNow side of things. And we have a project name as well too. If we want to deploy this into a specific project within HCP Terraform, we can call that out. And a description of the request, which the user can just put in to add a little bit of color to what the deployment will be doing. So with that in mind, and specifically thinking about the module name, let's head over to HCP Terraform and look at the actual module that we're going to be deploying. Within HCP Terraform here, we're at the top level kind of project view. We head over to the registry. We can see this is where we're going to house all the different modules that would be available for deployment within my organization. Traditionally, you're going to have or ideally have a smaller set of like producers or folks who write Terraform code. And then you want a larger number of consumers, folks who are able to just kind of pull those modules or configs and deploy them. And you ideally feel safe and have peace of mind in doing so, because these modules that have been published to the registry have been blessed by the security team and adhere to all the best practices that your organization defines. You can see I've got modules for Azure, GCP, AWS. In this case, we're going to be looking specifically at this RDS module for AWS. That's what's tied to the ServiceNow catalog item that we're going to be ordering in just a minute, right? And like any module, we have a few different components. We have a README, which can just give a description of what the module is. We have some inputs, which match the inputs that we defined on the ServiceNow side of things, right? Because these are what are required for the module to deploy, and we need to ensure that our users define them in ServiceNow when ordering the module to be deployed. Similar, if you used modules before, it's very kind of similar to how they work generally. Even if I was to just deploy a module without ServiceNow, typically there are inputs that are required for the user to be able to deploy them. Maybe it's a tag, maybe it's a name, right? Something that the user can use to kind of specify something about the deployment. We'll get some outputs as well too, like what the host name of the RDS instance will be, maybe what port we're running on. We can have some dependencies. If this module was dependent on, say, other modules, say there was a VPC module that was being called out within our RDS module, that would be listed here as well too. And then we get all the resources that are going to be actually deployed. In this case, in addition to the DB instance that I have, I'm also defining all of my networking components. So I actually have my VPC and subnets and route tables and internet gateways all defined locally within my config. So those are all called out here as well too. A couple other things to call out within the module registry. We can see the source over here actually links out to my own personal GitHub account and repository that I have the module in. And that's something to keep in mind, right? Our module code always remains in our Git repos. There's no code that's actually stored within HCP itself. So we get all the benefits out of a version control system for our config. If we take a look at our main TF here, we can see what it is that we're actually deploying, right? We have our VPC, public subnets, internet gateway, all the way down to the DB instance, like I mentioned before. So this stuff, just as a little sidebar, will be maintained by our Terraform experts, and is certainly not something that needs to be exposed to folks on the ServiceNow side of things who really just want a piece of infrastructure. That's really the whole point of this, is we have a set of users who just want to order and get a piece of infrastructure or a resource, a web app, a storage bucket, in this case, a database. And then we have usually a smaller set of Terraform experts who write and define all of our code and modules, and keep them up to date and version them and are able to collaborate on them together through your typical sort of GitOps or Git workflows. Back in the registry, we can then also see that we have this NoCode provisioning section that's called out there. And so if I was to go ahead and click Provision Workspace, that module would be deployed into its own workspace. This is the idea of NoCode, is that it allows users to not get into the Terraform code itself. Of course, there's code on the back end that's actually driving the deployments, but it's really from the end user aspect of, like, are they actually needing to configure code? Are they needing to work with the code itself? And in the instance of NoCode, the answer to that is no. Traditionally, to use modules, users would actually need to copy the configuration, put it into their own Terraform configs, and then run the deployments from there, right? Which, even though it may be quote unquote simple to some extent, for folks who've never used Terraform and infrastructure as code, or who aren't responsible for actually managing code, that's not something we want them to really be dealing with. We want them to just be able to more or less request something and have that be deployed, and then they're given, say, the outputs, maybe the DB host name, so that they can then access it, right? That's really the simplicity that we want to get out of a workflow like this. So back to this kind of no-code provisioning workspace section up top, right? To take a step back and sort of envision what's going on here when we order this module from ServiceNow. Essentially, what's happening when you click, or when we will click order in ServiceNow, it's logging into HCP Terraform using that API token, and then it's more or less clicking this provision workspace button so that this module is deployed into its own Terraform workspace, right? That's kind of at a high level what's going to be going on behind the scenes. Okay, so that's really it. Now let's go ahead and order this thing back in ServiceNow. I'm going to go back to my Terraform catalog and resources and scroll back down. Just call something else out here. As you can see here, we have a provision dev RDS instance catalog item. And this is actually a copy of this catalog item, provision no-code workspace and deploy resources, that we looked at before. The reason for doing this is that it's really a best practice. What's given to us out of the box as far as the catalog items within the Terraform app are essentially templates that we want to use for our real world scenarios. So in this case, I'm deploying an RDS instance, or I'm giving my users the ability to deploy an RDS instance. So I want to make this very apparent to them when they come in here, what's able to be ordered, right? And ideally, you're going to have, maybe multiple copies of this template for different pieces of your infrastructure, right? In reality, we want to be specific about these catalog items. We may have similar ones for storage buckets or front-end web or app servers, and we want them to be named appropriately, right? So as a user, I come in, I want a database. I'm going to click provision dev RDS instance, right? That's the catalog item that I have, say, permissions to be able to order. I'm going to open this up, and we'll see that it looks exactly the same as before, right? And it should be, because I literally copied it. The inputs that I'm going to need to put in here, we'll just make up. So workspace name, we'll call this devdb. The NoCode module name needs to reference the NoCode module that we looked at before, so that's actually going to be RDS. We'll just deploy this to the default project within Terraform, and we'll call this description development database. Simple enough. Then the actual module variables that we need to input, more on the this is the Terraform config side of things. We'll just call this devdb as well too. The username we'll call Terraform education, and then we'll just make up a password. We'll just call that education as well too. We're not actually going to be logging on to the DB, so it doesn't necessarily matter for the purposes of the demo, but just to kind of show you how it all works. Okay, so that's all that we need. Now to get this thing deployed, I'm just going to order the catalog item. We can see that we got a request number. If I open this request number, should have the actual kind of order number down here. So RITM 0010014. If I click into this, we should actually see some workflow steps as well too down at the bottom. We can see that I opened it up and it actually already started creating the Terraform workspace. So let's head over to Terraform. We're going to go to our projects. We'll jump into the default project. And there we go. We can see we have devdb, and it's been appended with that order number as well too, which is what I was talking about before. We'll open this up. We can see it's already moved along quite well already, right? So the run was triggered through an API integration using a NoCode module a few seconds ago. If you're familiar with the plan and apply workflow, we can see we've got our plan here that gives us all the diffs about what is going to be deployed. We get some cost estimation as well too. In this case, for the DB instance that we are deploying, it's going to cost us about, call that $14 a month. And then I have auto apply configured. So the apply is already kicking off, right? I didn't have to manually confirm that. Of course, if you want to have a gate there, you can have the plan stop, you review it before then applying. And it's going ahead and already kicking off all of the applies for all my networking components. They're all done already. The DB instance is going to take a few minutes. All right, so we'll probably pause the video here in a second. But first off, I mentioned before the other components of the platform are available to you as well too. If you wanted to apply policy to this workflow, you certainly could, right? And really the best practice way of doing that would be to apply policy at a project level and then have all of these workspaces be deployed into that project. So you get that kind of top-down inheritance from the project into the workspaces that's contained with it. Very kind of simple way about going about that. Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is going to take a few minutes. I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe pause the video while this creates. And then when I come back, we'll hop into the AWS console, just see where everything's deployed, and that should do it. So just give me a sec here and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back and we can see that the apply finished, which is great. And it gave us some random name generations as well too. Refined Silkworm is here. So let's head over to AWS, and I'm within the RDS section. We'll just refresh this. We should see, there it is, right? Refined Silkworm. So we deployed our instance, which is fantastic. All we were looking for. The only thing I wanted to show is that on the ServiceNow side of things, right, we mentioned before we have kind of the workflow steps that are kicked off. We actually get a nice little callback when the apply is finished, right, letting us know that the apply finished successfully and giving us our outputs as well too. So really kind of completing the loop there and goes to speak more about the chain of custody benefits that you get when using ServiceNow with HCP Terraform. So that is really it. Thanks for joining me on the overview of how ServiceNow integrates with HCP Terraform, right? To recap real quick, we leveraged no-code modules in HCP and tied them into ServiceNow's catalog. And then we got some approval workflows that really allow us to kind of streamline our deployments, reduce a lot of that complexity, and really empower more users to securely provision infrastructure, all with that end-to-end chain of custody flow stemming from ServiceNow and into Terraform for our cloud deployments. If you have any questions or really want to explore this any further, please feel free to reach out to me or your HashiCorp account team, or just visit our website and we'd be happy to take the next step in simplifying your infrastructure delivery. Thanks so much.